Hi guys, so I'm back. I am here to basically share part one of my testimony. I'm here with my bestie Melissa. She's she's hiding in the corner. Yes. So I'm gonna have her help me basically get through this because this is a lot to talk about and just unpack. So she's just gonna basically ask me some questions and then I'm gonna go from there. So yeah.
Okay. Hi, guys. Um, I want you to introduce yourself to the people. Who are you?
Okay. Well, I guess I should start off where I was born. So I was born in Longview, Texas, in a very small rural area of Texas, which is primarily like, I think a population of maybe like 500 people. And I was born in the 80s, late 80s, let me make that clear. But no, let me focus. Sorry, guys. I'm nervous. So yeah, I was born in Texas, and then yeah, that was my first question. I want to go step by step because otherwise I will get off focus.
Okay. Um, Tell me about your parents' relationship.
Good question. So growing up, my parents, they were a biracial couple. They uh, were basically born in a time where biracial couples were not a thing, let alone accepted in society at that time, because they were born in a time where it was a lot of segregation and racism because they were born in the 40s. So when my parents got together before I was born, um, they worked in construction together. My mom was from California and my dad's from Chicago. I don't know fully how I know they met in construction because that's what my mom told me, but my dad was never really the type of person to really share anything about their relationship. My mom was usually the one to tell me, but my parents met and they had my sister. Um, and then shortly after, they had me. 2.5 years after, they had my sister, and we lived in Texas. And they moved us to Oklahoma, which was called Dover, Oklahoma, which was even smaller town, which these areas were very racist back then, very, still are to this day, but it's not as broadcasted, or they're not as bold with just the way that those areas are with people of two different nationalities getting together. But my parents were very strict and very stern parents, very um, my father was very Jamaican. He's Jamaican father, so he was very no makeup, um, no talking back, no having an opinion, no nothing. My mother was the opposite. She was very outgoing. She was very boisterous. Um, so for them to come together was very strange if you think about it, because I was like, how did they this correlate growing up? And um, they were Jehovah's Witness from since I can remember as a child. I don't know when they became Jehovah's Witnesses, but they were. Um, that's all I knew from when I was little. Yeah.
Would you say you had a good childhood?
No. So, well, basically, my first memories of being a child was when I was living in Dover, Oklahoma, which was around the time when the 93 bombing hit. I know everybody pretty much knows about that. I was a little girl, and when I was growing up in that area, I was going to a school that was very, very racist and very prejudiced. Like, I remember I was very athletic at that time, and I was in a lot of just activities, even in kindergarten. But my kindergarten teacher would put me in the back of the class with one of the other kids that was, he was Mexican, I think. Yeah. We were the only two kids that were isolated from the rest of the children. And this is kindergarten, mind you. My parents didn't know that they were doing this to us because I was scared to tell my parents that I was being mistreated as in class. Like, we weren't allowed to have the snacks that other kids had. We weren't allowed to even basically play with the kids. And when I mean kids, I mean the kids that were white. So in class, we were always put basically in a small section, or we would be put outside the class, which now as an adult, this was horrible to think that this is like my first memories of like interacting with kids or just children in general. Um, so being a kid at that age, going through that in school, when I come home, um, it would be like a whole nother type of like a nightmare. Basically, I remember when I was probably it was around Halloween, which I think at the time, I don't know why we were celebrating Halloween, but this was only a memory I have of celebrating Halloween. We lived in this really small, it was like a trailer. It was my grandfather's land, and the trailer was half trailer, half house. I don't know how to explain that now. But in that area, it was very like a lot of more poverty stricken area, predominantly white people that lived in the area that were poor. We had a neighbor maybe a mile away. Each neighbor was a mile away. But I just remember we went trick-or-treating, and when we came back home, there was like, I was in between being a witch and a clown. And when I came home, I remember putting the clown mask on the wall, and the mask started bleeding like blood. And I used to see stuff when I was little in the house. It was like floating objects, but they were heads of like reptiles, but they were bodies of humans, and they were floating in like this green fog. And I was used to wonder, I used to ask my sister, I'm like, do you see that? And she was like, no, I don't see what you're seeing. And shortly after that night, my parents started arguing. My dad was always like drinking, and he told us to go to bed. My dad never was the type of father to like curse, but he was very abusive. So in the house, it's just, you would always feel stuff. Things would be flying, like moving objects would just fly past you. And as a child, I didn't know what was really going on. I was just like, why is this house like this? It was just very haunted, to be completely honest. It was very haunted. It's very demonic. That land was cursed. The land was basically from slavery, like it was our grandfather's land, but I think in the 1800s a lot of people had died on the land, and that probably explains why it was so haunted. But that night, I just remember my mom screaming, and I got out of my bed. My father was raping my mother, and so he don't know I seen it, but I was just standing there, I was watching it, but I was like just still. And then I just remember always being isolated, and everything, there was no, you don't, to be that young as a child and you try to like ask for, say, water or food, that was even an issue. Like, for instance, like my father, he was abusive to my mother. I don't know when he started abusing my mom, but it was definitely probably when I was probably around like 3 or 2, from what my sister had told me, because she was 2.5 years older than me. But we weren't allowed to do anything. My mother was not allowed to do anything unless we were with her, and he had to know where she was at, what she was doing. And he would have people that knew him that would follow my mom, like basically watch her, like come with her as like a chaperone. And my dad would have parties sometimes, and if my mom would get upset, my mom was a very bold woman, but she started to become very like a shell of a woman, because she was just basically isolated from everything. She was isolated from her family, and I didn't know why. We never really seen my mom's family like that, but now I know why, because she was in an abusive relationship. So basically all the times that we ever got to go anywhere or do anything, it would always end really bad. I remember we went to go see Free Willy. That was in 93, right? 93? Yeah, Free Willy was in 93. We went to go, and we didn't really get to ever go anywhere or do anything. It was school, home, repeat. And cleaning, I started cleaning when I was 5, and cooking, trying to cook, but I didn't really know how to cook. But we went to go see Free Willy. We went to Whole Foods, I remember, and then we went to see the movie. And I remember coming back, my mom, it was like the best memory I have with my mom, and then we came home, and I remember seeing my dad. He was standing in like the driveway, and like in that area, once it got dark, it got pitch black. Like you couldn't see anything around you because it was the country. And I just remember we got closer up to like, because we had like a long driveway up to the house, and everything was like dirt roads in that area. But we had drove to Oklahoma City. This was before that bombing had happened, but we went to you'd have to drive like maybe an hour, 2 hours away just to have like malls, movie theaters, and stuff like that. So when we got home, my dad was like standing outside. He had a gun in his hand. And he told my mom to get out the car. And she's like, Harold, I'm not getting out the car. And I just remember being really scared. And I was just thinking to myself, like, why is my dad like this? Like, why is he always so mean? So he ended up shooting the tires. And he's like, this is the last time you ever go anywhere. So then he made my sister get out the car. So my sister got out the car and he put the gun to her head. And so then I got out the car and my mom got out the car. And I just remember being so scared, and we ran in the house and they started arguing. And then shortly after that, probably about 2 days later, my dad had another party because my dad was using drugs at the time. He would alcohol, and I think he was using like cocaine, because sometimes he would take me with my mom, because my mom was always working and my dad was just kind of like freelancing, as he called it. But he would always bring women to the house when my mom wasn't home. And so my mom, I remember she had to go to California because my grandma died. And so he wouldn't let her take us with him because he was scared that she was going to leave him. So she had to leave me and my sister with my dad, which I hated. I don't want to use the word hate because I was so little then, but I had so much fear being around my dad because just the things I've seen him do. So the day my mom left, my dad's like, well, I have to take you girls with me. But he wouldn't take Ashley. He made her stay in the house by herself, and he took me with him to it looked like a house, but it was like people were like gambling, and there was like, basically it was cocaine on the table. Now as an adult, I know what it was. And there was all these like rooms, and there was men and women going in and out. And he told me, sit here and I'll be back. Nobody bothered me, but I remember a man telling him, why would you bring a child here? And I just remember in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna tell my mom when I see her. But I was scared at the same time because after we left, he gave me a whole talk about he was doing business. And I just looked at him like, but I would never speak or even get out of character to question him because I was scared. And I knew what he could do because I've seen what he could do to my mom, and I just didn't want to get in trouble. But growing up, it was just my whole childhood was filled with fear. So, and he was very hands-on. He was never the type of father who sexually abused us. It was just like beatings, like severe beatings he would do, just out of like if he was drunk or if he was angry. And so just to sum it up, because there's so many incidents of trauma that I could talk about, but the main thing I will say is like shortly after my mom came back from California, after my grandma died, my dad had another party at the house, and my mom, I think she was just fed up at this point, and she said she seen there was a woman outside, and she had like, I think she had like shaved her head. I don't know. She from my knowledge, she didn't have any hair. But I knew that she was very close up on my father, and my parent, they started arguing. My mom went and got a gun, and she told me and my sister, she said, go in this room. She said, if I don't come back, girls, basically go to the neighbors and they'll know what to do. And I was like, what does that mean? And my sister was about 8 at the seven, probably almost 8, and I was 5. So I was just really scared because I knew something bad was about to happen again. And then my mom went outside with a shotgun and she shot it off, and she told everybody to leave. So everybody started leaving, and I just remember my mom screaming and yelling, and then everybody left, and then we were watching from like the window, and I just remember my mom As soon as everybody left, he instantly punched her, and then they started fighting, and then I know he like punched her again, and he like basically made her unconscious, and he took the gun and he dragged her in the woods. And so me and Ashley, we just went, my sister, we went and hid in the closet. And my dad came in the house, probably, it felt like forever, but he came in the house and he was bloody. He had blood on his shoes. His clothes had blood all over him. And I thought my mom was dead. I was like, she's legit dead. And we was crying, but my sister's like, be quiet. And he was looking for us. And he had the gun in his hand and we're hiding. But where we were at, there was like this lady, but she had wings. And now I know that was an angel. And she was like guarding wow, it just came to me. That's wild. We were like in basic clear sight where he should have been able to see us, but he didn't see us. And then he left. He eventually, because he was screaming our names, come out now. And I was like terrified. And I was just really quiet, like trying to like stay quiet and not like let him hear us. And then when the morning came, it felt like forever. We were just in that room. I had to pee. I peed on myself, I remember, because I didn't want him coming to see where we were at, because I didn't know what he was going to do. And my mom was bloody, and she told us to get our clothes. And before that, right before this happened, that night, my dad went, and he would too, when I was a child, we were kids, he would take animals, and he's like, oh, you girls love animals more than me, and he would shoot our dogs as punishment, like shoot them in front of us and kill them. And that night, he went and killed a couple more of our dogs, because we had like a whole farm. And I just remember, like, I didn't know, I was just like, well, why is my dad like this? And I did, for a long time, I had I started to have, that's when I feel like hate started to grow in my heart, and fear for men. And shortly that next day is when we left. My mom put us in a trunk. This lady came and she covered us with blankets. And I remember my mom telling us, like, just basically like, just be quiet, girls, don't say nothing. And I know we were driving and somebody stopped us. It was somebody that was, because he had a lot of people watching my mom and us. And they were looking, and they asked the lady, like, have you seen Lori and the girls? And the lady's like, no. And after that is when we moved to Texas, and I didn't see my dad for about 6 years. We were separated from him.
Okay. Tell them about you growing up Jehovah's Witness. How did you become a Jehovah's Witness?
Okay, good question. So when we moved to Texas, I remember when we got to Texas, a lot of things are fuzzy for me because I blocked a lot of things out. But lately, as I've gotten closer to God, now I remember a lot of stuff. Like lately, I've been hearing songs and I'm thinking of things. But when we moved to Texas, it was like the best time of my childhood. Like, it was so much fun. Like, we would go to like cookouts, and my mom was friends with the Woodses. That was their names. And they were like friends with her since before we were born, me and my sister. They were all black. My mom, I thought my mom growing up was not white because all her friends were black. I thought my mom was like Spanish descent. I don't know. She never really told me what she was. That was not a conversation that was had. But kids used to ask us if we were adopted. But I'm like, no, like that's my mom. She was just older. But when we moved to Texas, my mom's friends were all Jehovah's Witnesses. So from my recollection, that's how we became Jehovah's Witnesses, because they basically gave her housing. We were put in like a battered shelter with battered women, which I didn't know that's where we were living until my dad ended up popping back up years later. And then we got kicked out of that program. But that time of my life was really good. I would go to the Kingdom Hall. I remember we would go probably about 6 days a week. Like, we were there almost every day. My mom was she had like 3 jobs, but my mom was she drove the school bus, she cleaned houses. That's all she did at that time. But that time of my life was it was good because we were happy. My mom was a really good mom. she was very strict, but she was very loving. Um, and in that time, like, we just always were surrounded by loving people. Like, nobody around us at that time was harmful, or um, just nobody was there to like put fear in us or anything like that. So that was nice. The Woods family, um, I don't talk to them anymore because I'm not Jehovah's Witness, but when I was a kid, it was every Sunday we would have like, either they would do a cookout, a fish fry, or a barbecue, or like a Sunday dinner. Like, that's a Southern thing. Like, everybody in the South just does, um, like, it's very family oriented, like traditional type of um, things that they do. But going to the Kingdom Hall, I always knew like the men, the elders of the I guess you could say the Kingdom Hall. It wasn't, they don't call them pastors, they call them elders. And they were always just strange to me. Like, and then they would say stuff in the services, because the service would be so long, and I used to not like that at all. I was like, this they take forever. Like, dang, we done sung like 4 songs, and I was just like, always in the back of my head, I'm like, this don't make sense. Especially when they would talk about Jesus, it just didn't click. I'm like, this ain't adding up. Like, no, this doesn't. It just didn't sit right in my spirit. I'm like, there has to be more. Because when they say, oh, Jesus is not the Son of God, but I'm like, I don't know. I had so many questions as a kid. And I remember they would always tell us we couldn't associate with other kids in school. We weren't allowed to celebrate our birthday, holidays, anything of that nature. That was not something that you do. But there was like such a big community to where they have these yearly conventions, which I would always look forward to, because I could play with other kids that were Jehovah's Witnesses and just be able to like socialize. My mom was very protective of me and my sister. And basically, shortly, I would say maybe 3 to 4 years of us living in Texas, things started going for a turn. There was a lot of human trafficking in that area, and it started with the Kingdom Hall. And I know now that one of the elders was trafficking girls, which is just wild to even think of that this is something. But how can somebody that is in the church or of God, of a godly person, do stuff like this? And the reason why I say that is because I had seen one of the elders in the church, heard him having a conversation with another man about selling. And I was like, what the heck are they selling? What are they talking about? So I listened a little more, and he's like, yeah, well, you can go and to the schoolyard at this time, and that's the time that you can pick them up. So I was like, that's interesting. And shortly after, one day I was going home from school, and I almost got kidnapped. And I remember telling my mom, and that was like the worst thing I could have did. I feel like, because after that, it was like there was no freedom. Like, my mom was terrible. She had so much fear of like something happening to us that she was like, you girls, school, home, like, you can't go outside, you can't play, you can't do nothing. And that's when I started gaining weight at that time. I remember as a kid, because I was always very active prior. So maybe about a year later, and two, at that time with school, I was very like popular. I felt very loved, very accepted. But the thing is like, the kids in school, they told me I had to pick a side. So like, I couldn't hang out with kids of the opposite race. I had to only hang out with one race. So that was hard for me, because I didn't feel like I should have to choose who I could be friends with. But I just did what I had to do, because I just wanted to be accepted at the time. I just wanted people to like me. And I just remember we had like these older girls that like lived upstairs from us, and they were like smoke cigarettes. And I started smoking cigarettes when I was like 8, 9, because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be accepted. And I just remember too, just always having a urge to like want to be looked at by boys from young. I never was like wanting to have sex or anything like that, but I just wanted somebody to love me. Like, I always yearned for like love and male attention, and to just to feel like somebody cared about me, because my whole childhood, I never, especially my father, he never told me he loved me, like maybe once my whole childhood, which, as a young lady or a little girl, they say your first experiences with a man really paints the way for how you are in your adult life, which explains a lot on why I've accepted a lot of things with relationships as an adult, because of what I wasn't getting, or the example that I had was not good from men. Um, but my childhood in Texas with my mom and my sister was great until um, I started getting a little older, and then that's when, you know, with school and stuff, and after the first attempt of kidnapping with the men in the van, I was scared of men that were Hispanic, because the men that tried to kidnap me were Hispanic. So I thought all Hispanic men were evil and bad, which was very ignorant, but I was a child, so I didn't know any better. And just in the South, you don't, everything was black and white. Especially in the 90s, everybody just stayed to their own kind. So me being a biracial child, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere, because Spanish kids, they spoke Spanish. I look Spanish, but I'm not Spanish. It just, I had an identity of who I was since I was little, because I always never felt accepted, which opened a lot of doors to making me feel like I needed to be something that I wasn't. And that did open the door of viewing myself very poorly, and it really messed with my self-esteem. And when I started gaining weight, I started using food as a way to cope with like not being able to play, and I used food as just a way to like comfort me. And then when the weight started coming on, I didn't like the names that I get called, and that didn't start until when I moved to Chicago. But yeah, so with Texas, just to sum it up, because I'll be talking about this all day. Shortly after the kidnapping, I came home one day from school, and my dad was sitting in the living room, and I had a glass cup in my hand. I'll never forget it. And I dropped it, and it broke. And shortly after that, my parents basically were back together, and I was really upset with my mom. I was angry with her, because I just knew everything I knew that was attached to my dad was not good. So seeing him just brought so much fear, because the last time I'd seen my dad, he was bloody, and he was just bloody, and I thought he was going to try to kill us, which I don't know what he was going to do, but it just brought so much fear into my heart. And that was like in 98, 99, when I found out that my mom tells us that we're moving to Chicago. And my dad was going with us to Kingdom Hall, so they knew that my dad was around. He was with us for about a year in Texas, going to the Kingdom Hall. And then, okay. So, yeah, I have to cut this short, because I know I'm going to keep talking. But basically, when my dad came back, he found my mom. I don't know how he found my mom. I never really got to ask those questions, because my mom is, she's passed on. But we were in the Kingdom Hall, and we basically moved to Chicago, and that's where I will continue on just part two, basically, of my teenage years. Well, I should say my adolescent into my teenage years, into becoming an adult, which was in Chicago. So, but thank you guys for hearing me out. Yeah, so we will do part two very soon. All right, have a good night.